Good evening from New York. Welcome to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Whether we monarchist Brits like to admit it or not, the President of the United States is the single most important person in the world, commanding the world's mightiest military and holding the purse strings of its biggest economy. The President could end Israel's war in Gaza with a phone call or decide if Ukraine gets the backing it needs to beat Putin. At least that's the general idea. But the current Commander-in-Chief is 81, seemingly going on 181 after a lifetime of distinguished public service as a pragmatic politician and, in my view, a thoroughly decent human being. President Biden looks increasingly unfit for service. And with the president in visible decline, his re-election campaign is, well, transitioning. You might say its pronouns are changing before our very eyes. The two most important women in President Biden's life have been sent out to jumpstart the 2024 race. Wildly unpopular VP Kamala Harris said this.
We've got 10 months to go until the election. And increasingly, and you've seen it even just this week, we are all starting to narrow in on what this election will mean. And it's going to be the choice between what is about respecting our democracy, what is about competence versus chaos.
Well, the Vice President is right. Competence is crucially important, but her own boss has trouble getting up the stairs and can't seem to find a way off a stage. His frequent verbal and physical stumbles are the subject of both comedy and concern. Most people responded with laughter and derision, for example, when First Lady Jill Biden said this about him.
I see Joe every day. I see him out, traveling around this country. I see his vigor. I see his energy.
To those who say I can't vote for Joe Biden, he's too old. What do you say?
I say his age is an asset.
Energy and vigour. Not quite what I'm seeing. You can make a plausible case for the wise old statesman with a firm hand on the tiller, but campaigning on Biden's vigour may well fast-track Donald Trump, who does have a lot of vigour, to the White House. Now, at 77, Trump's no spring chicken himself, but with his diet-defying swagger and showmanship, most people on his side seem to be believing him when he says things like this.
I feel like I'm about 35 years old. I actually feel better now than I did 30 years ago. Tell me, is that crazy? I feel better now. And I think cognitively I'm better than I was 20 years ago. I don't know why.
That is a slightly more debatable subject, Mr. Trump, but a whopping 77% of Americans, both Republican and Democrats, believe that Biden is simply too old to run the country. Almost 70% think he's mismanaged the crisis at the southern border. Just 13% say they're financially better off on his watch. At this stage of his term, he's the least popular US president in recorded history. And this stuff matters. US politics is almost hysterically polarised to the rest of us outside America, but most voters are in fact ready to be persuaded. White working-class voters ditched the Democrats to propel Trump to office in 2016. Now more and more Hispanic and black voters are shifting Republican too. Biden says he's the only man who's ever beaten Trump, and that's true. But right now, he may be the only one who can lose to Trump in November. Well, I'm joined by my super PAC here in the studio in New York, co-host of The Breakfast Club, Charlamagne Tha God, host of The Rubin Report, Dave Rubin, and the Democrat strategist and Fox News contributor Jessica Tarlov, who I could hear her lips pursing as I read that monologue.
That loud?
I could feel them pursing.
I appreciate, though, I saw you tempered it a bit. Whoever put it in the prompter was harsher than you were.
I could feel the pursing. I was reining back in real time. Let me start with you, Jessica, because I like Joe Biden personally. Yeah. I think he's got a lot of very admirable qualities as a human being, and his own story. The fact he lost his wife and a baby when he was just a senator. He then lost another son. Anyone that can do that and still do the job he's doing will always have my admiration. But there is no doubt he is in real trouble here. Is there any doubt? I mean, can you paint a picture that isn't as grim as the one I painted?
Oh, I definitely can do that. And I've been preparing for 3.5 minutes to get a chance. I'm not going to start by denying that the age factor is massive in all of this. And I think that people's concerns as well about Kamala Harris and her readiness to take over informs that. If there was a hugely popular vice president kind of waiting in the wings, I think things might feel a bit different for people. But 81 is 81. There are some 81-year-olds. We all watch Warren Buffett, right?
Mick Jagger is 80.
Yes.
Nearly 81.
He would have a different kind of agenda for the country. But yes, he does.
Might be quite a popular one.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
I wouldn't hate it. But there is a problem going on right now with media coverage of the Biden presidency, and there are problems with the Biden campaign.
What are the problems?
So I'll start with media coverage. Everybody knows now that you want to print stories that get clicks, and negative stories are the ones that do it. Even people who are huge supporters of the president focus on all the polls that are negative. Most people wouldn't know that if you went to the Real Clear Politics homepage and clicked on polls, the average has Joe Biden down just 1 percentage point to Trump. You would think that he was getting trounced. You'd look at swing state polls, and you'd see that in a lot of the swing states, like Pennsylvania, for instance, which is going to be a huge deal, he's up massively. We only talked about the fact that he was down in one Michigan poll last week. In terms of the economic news, the Wall Street Journal, our very own Wall Street Journal here at News Corp, had a hugely optimistic set of editorials out there. It's 62% of Americans think the next year, so 2024 election year, is going to be better for them. When are they going to go and vote? In November. That's a lot of time for this economic recovery to really settle in for people. But no one wants to talk about that. It's not popular. It's not good clickbait. The second part about the campaign, and this is where I think the Obama folks who have been perhaps too publicly critical, I think, of the Biden campaign, their ground game is not visible to folks. They don't feel like they're there in Nevada, in Arizona, in Georgia, in these states that we desperately need to win. And they are working on that. And I think that the president himself needs to be more visible. If I was working in the White House, I would have him out there all the time. I understand you might be risking a stumble.
I wouldn't. I'd do what they did with him last time. I'd keep him in a dungeon. I mean, Dave, look, here's the thing. I think the problem is not, it's not his age. I think that Joe Biden's problem is the clear senility that's going with his age. Like I said, I met Mick Jagger last summer, absolutely bursting with the vim and vigour that Jill wants us to believe she sees him go.
Look, Piers, do any of us sitting at this table or anyone watching this think that he could run one shift at McDonald's? And I don't mean that as a shot for someone that works at McDonald's.
Well, that's what a lot of senior citizens do, though.
But I don't think he could. I think a lot of senior citizens could, because I don't think it's an age thing. I agree with you. It's a cognitive
Dame Joan Collins at the Emmys stole the show.
Yes.
She's 90 years old. Good friend of mine. She looks about 50, and she has the mental acuity of a 50-year-old. She has vim and vigour. So Jill Biden is right to say it's about vim and vigour, but her husband doesn't exude it.
Well, look, let's put it this way. You opened by saying something about ailing Joe Biden, and I thought, oh, I haven't looked at my phone in 20 minutes. Did something else happen?
It's a general ailing.
It's ailing. Yes, we all know it. The wandering off when they get him off the plane and the confusion. He literally on camera what was it, 2 years ago, said, let's go, Brandon. Like, something is not right. We all know it. And I would say respectfully, in terms of the polls and everything, people don't vote on what really matters. We vote on what we can feel, right? And I think because of that, people are going, Donald Trump, he seems back. There's energy there, and there's just no energy with Biden.
Trump,
and nobody likes Kamala.
But Trump has lost every election except 2016.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a loser.
And, right to the point, the Democrats decided to finish him off with 91 criminal charges and thought, this'll do him. He's down, he's wounded, and we'll get him. And it's had the complete opposite effect. He has used that to play the martyr, the victim. It has fueled a resurgent Trump. And you cannot deny, I mean, I've seen people try to downplay what happened to Iowa. But if that had been Joe Biden who'd done that at Iowa, you'd be saying, this is unbelievable. It's a landslide. It's amazing. He's killing them, right? Trump is back. And I think will definitely be the nominee, regardless, unless there's some extraordinary twist of events. He's exuding the air of someone on a mission. He's got vim and vigour. And whether you love him or hate him, and it's equal doses with Trump, you've got to say, Trump v. Biden in November, I could see Trump winning that.
Is there anything about Iowa that makes you say maybe Republicans should pivot and go to somebody like a Nikki Haley, maybe? Like when you see that she picks up, a lot of Democrats, a lot of independents, do you think that they're doing themselves a disservice by maybe not getting behind her?
Possibly.
Because you know the GOP is going to fall in line, and she's somebody who seems like they can pick up votes from both sides.
Yeah, I mean, but you yourself made news by talking about the vim and vigour claim by Jill Biden, didn't you? I mean, you're not...
I don't see the vim and...
You're not...
vim and vigour, or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I had a great time on your Breakfast Club show yesterday, and it was really enlightening conversation we had. But, it's not that like you said, are you telling people to vote Trump? No. It's not for me to tell people how to vote in this country. And I've been very critical of Trump in the since certainly overall the stolen election nonsense, the January 6th thing. I wasn't buying into any of that. And in a way, I felt that was disqualifying. But we are where we are. It didn't disqualify him. He could actually go to prison and still be president of the United States, constitutionally. So we're into completely uncharted territory. All I do feel is the more the Democrats have tried to kill him off, particularly with all these criminal charges, the more that even Republicans that don't like him have gone, you know what, it is a witch hunt. The Liberals are trying to nail this guy. He's one of us. We're going to back him. And so it's been self-defeating. A bit like the Russian collusion thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think the interesting thing is if you're going to use language like, this is going to be the end of democracy as we know it, then there needs to be a sense of urgency. Like you said, when is the ground game going to start? Why is the ground game just starting now if it's going to be, the end of democracy? And I think that's what scares people, too. If we see the clear and, to me anyway, the clear and present danger that could be a second Trump presidency, is the Biden-Harris ticket a winnable ticket? I'm a person who voted for Joe Biden in 2020, so I don't think it's anything wrong with asking that question.
Do you think it's a winnable ticket?
I don't know. When I look at the polls, I don't think so. I think that a 60-plus-year-old...
No incumbent president with this poll rating that Biden's currently at in the low 30s has ever been re-elected.
Yeah, when I look at it, I don't think so. You never know. You can say it's 50-50, but I think a 60-plus-year-old Joe Biden, with the things he's done as far as the infrastructure bill, even the student loan forgiveness, the way the economy is now, I think a 60-something-year-old Joe Biden.
He also said to you on your show, which again made headlines. You make a lot of headlines, Charlamagne. I'm jealous. But he said, if you're black and you don't vote for me, you're not black. He meant it as a joke. But what did you think when he said that? Was that a sense of entitlement, a bit of arrogance about the African-American vote?
I think that, he has too many black friends around him, and they made him feel comfortable enough to make that joke. I feel like he probably had a bunch of black people around him who have said that exact language, because when they say that, they're saying that, hey, if you vote for Trump, you're literally voting, against your own interests as a black person. And I think he's heard that a bunch of times, so he thought that would have been a nice little quote.
Dave, let me ask you a specific thing, Dave, about this, right? So Trump, this is where I have a problem with Trump. Every time I sort of, he makes me laugh, right? He just does. When he said that thing on the eve of Iowa, that even if it kills you, come out and vote it. You've got to laugh, right? And actually watching
people
leader of the free world.
But watching po-faced liberals lose their minds when he does that stuff makes me chuckle, right? I see myself as pretty down the middle, but I think he's funny and he can make people laugh. But when he says this, I don't laugh, right? He said the President of the United States on Truth Social yesterday, the President of the United States must have full immunity, without which it would be impossible for him or her to properly function. Any mistake, even if well-intended, would be met with almost certain indictment by the opposing party at term end. For even events that cross the line must fall under total immunity. So I tweeted, so if President Biden orders the immediate assassination of you, Donald Trump, that's okay, is it? That's covered.
What you're explaining is the true magic of Donald Trump, whether you love his policies or not. Because on one hand, you're going, well, there are certain lines when he pokes fun at the...
Yeah, but he means this.
No. So your line now is, he put it in quotes, crosses the line.
No, I can tell when he's laughing and joking.
So you think when he says cross the line, what he meant was, I can take out Joe Biden.
No, that was me suggesting that that's where you take the argument.
But what do you think he means?
I think what he means...
He would kill one of his political opponents or get them killed if he could.
No, I think he's actually, as always with Trump, it's self-interest. He wants to basically make sure he can't be prosecuted.
He means Jack Smith, go home.
Yeah.
That's what he means.
Yeah,
and if the corollary is my political opponent could kill someone, he then wants to talk about 2016 when we all ran around and said, he could shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue, and his supporters wouldn't care.
By this new criteria, he could do that and get away with it.
Right. Well, I think there are some legal questions as per what a president is allowed to get away with and not be prosecuted after. But I'm pretty sure murder is not one of them, like outright murder.
We don't know that.
He would like it to be. He would like anything that crosses the line to fall under total immunity.
The man has open adulation for Xi Jinping,
That's right.
for Kim Jong-un.
That's right.
He's a wannabe dictator, and I don't, I've been at Fox News my entire media career. I do not fancy myself an MSNBC type person who wants to lose their mind about those things. But that is very serious to have someone who was the leader of the free world and is running to be it again, to believe that these people who are anathema to democracy are doing it right.
What did you feel when Kamala...
And also, too, though, we're acting like, it's not just rhetoric. Yes, he said he wanted to be a dictator for a day. Yes, he said, he should be immune from killing, immune from killing his political rivals. But He also attempted a coup in his country, guys.
Right.
Like, why are we acting like that did not happen? Why do we keep acting like January 6th did not happen?
I mean, it didn't happen. I mean, what, that a bunch of people showed up with no plans, no weapons? I mean, I'm not defending the people that actually broke windows or anything else, but there was no coup. There was no
That was an
insurrection.
attempted coup in this country. I got eyes and ears. I'm not a political expert,
Was there
but
a plan?
I know what I saw.
Was there a plan? Did anyone have a piece of paper that said
Proud
this is what
Boys
we're
had a
gonna
plan,
do?
and they were invited into the White House.
right.
There were people with zip ties. That's not a casual thing that you walk around with.
I'm not diminishing
They went after
anyone
the ballot box.
Just
They were
because
talking about hanging the vice president.
There were 1,000, there were only 100 bad ones, let's say. That doesn't mean that it wasn't an attempted coup fomented by the President of the United States of America.
I mean, does anyone honestly think that Donald Trump thought that the next day he would be president, post-transition,
Bill Barr does, which is why he finally had to go. There are people, I mean, what was so powerful about the January 6th committee and what they were able to put together is the fact that they used almost exclusively Republican testimony. People who had worked for him. I mean, look at the text messages from his own son to Mark Meadows, or what Ivanka had to be honest about when she testified, or Jared Kushner, or Cassidy Hutchinson, who they're going after now. I mean, he made a mockery of our system. And frankly, I mean, it speaks to the strength of our institutions and the backbone of Mike Pence for that 8 hours that he was able to say,
I thought it was I got to say, it was a pretty terrifying spectacle.
I'm sure watching it abroad, you thought, what the hell is going on
I
here?
remember emailing one of his team and saying, you've got to get him out there and call this thing off. And he didn't for a long period of time while this mayhem was erupting. You can dress it any way you like. You can spin it any way you like.
It was an attempted coup.
Thousands of people whipped up into a mindset of, we have to stop this democratic action happening, stormed into the epicenter of American politics, and they tried to take control and, in their eyes, stop democracy happening. Now, the liberal response, by the way, which is to classic liberal response, which is completely half-assed, which is to say, right, let's take him off the ballot now in loads of different states, is obviously stupid.
Right,
because
that is the rocket fuel.
You don't try and stop a guy you think has tried to thwart democracy by thwarting democracy.
Can I say two things? One, Charlamagne brought up a point that I wanted to add on to that's really important about the vim and vigor, right? So Donald Trump, I don't think that he's going to trip and fall and die tomorrow. But when people do see him, he's talking absolute rubbish.
He's done that for 50 years. I mean, come on.
But people, I agree. And I didn't even like his shows when it was on regular TV. But my point is...
Even when I appeared? Come on, the 2008 Celebrity Apprentice was the stuff of a masterpiece.
But the kind of communication that he's putting out there, even in the last 48 hours, we went from Iowa, I was there, I was on air, and I said this is a big accomplishment for him. He's being conciliatory. How long will it last? Then we got to immigrants are poisoning the blood of America. Then defaming a woman who he's been charged. They found him guilty of sexually assaulting her. He continues with that. He's talking about how magnets work in water, using ID to buy a loaf of bread. It's not like people who are at home are saying, this guy's got it together and this guy doesn't.
No, but you know what
I'm
it
not
is?
even defending any of
You know what? We're going to come back. I'm going to talk after the break to Dean Phillips and keep you guys here to react to that. But I also want to talk about what Jamie Dimon said, which I thought was really interesting, when he said that if you call everyone who's a MAGA a supporter of Trump, if you call them a bunch of crazies, then you are completely missing the point why most of them actually want to vote for Trump, which is economy, foreign policy, the border, all these things which he was strong on last time. He said that's why they want him back, because they feel they've been let down on that by Biden. We'll talk about that after the break. Stay with me. Uncensored next. More from my New York super PAC. I'll be joined by the Democratic presidential candidate who wants Joe Biden to stand aside. He's Minnesota Congressman Dean Phillips, and he'll be here live in a couple of minutes. Welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored, live from New York City. Democrats are privately fretting about President Biden's disastrous polling in the race for the White House. Very few of them are prepared to say it out loud. Only one elected Democrat has been bold enough to run against the incumbent president. And US Representative Dean Phillips is that man and joins me now. Well, Mr. Phillips, thank you for joining me. I guess the first question for the global audience is, who are you and why do you want to be president?
Who am I and why do I want to be president? Well, I'll tell you my quick story. I lost my father in the Vietnam War. He was a soldier who served his country and gave his life to our country. I got very lucky. 3 years later, my mom remarried. I was adopted into a remarkable family. one of many blessings, including business, philanthropy. My grandmother was the advice columnist Dear Abby, entered our family business, built Belvedere Vodka, then sold that, built Talenti Gelato, the ice cream brand. And Piers, I woke up the morning after the 2016 election. I found my youngest daughter in her bedroom in tears, and I recognized life has changed in America and around the world. I promised them, my two daughters, I would do something. I ran for Congress. I flipped a district that had not elected a Democrat since 1958, and I beat an incumbent who had won by 14 points. I beat him by 12. And I got to the U.S. Congress in 2019 and found an unmitigated, dysfunctional disaster that is easily fixed with good leadership, Piers. And you ask why I'm running for president? Well, the overwhelming, exhausted majority of Americans, center-right, center-left Americans, common sense people, are tired of this. They want to turn the page from both Trump and Biden. And I tell you, I tried to get the president to pass the torch. I called other candidates who are better known than me. None of them would do it. So I thought it was time for courage. My father gave his life to this country. And I entered the race because if not now, when? And if not me, who? And I got to tell you, Piers, it is a joyful journey, and Americans are not as divided as Angertainment would have us believe. And I'm going to make change in a common sense, decent way that engages Democrats and Republicans and moves beyond this dangerous nonsense.
Well, look, everything you say makes perfect sense, except this. Joe Biden, if he doesn't stand down, will be the nominee. Now, twice in post-Second World War history, there has been an incumbent Democrat president who has done that. You know, Lyndon Johnson did it, and there was another president who did it. They stood down and didn't go forward. But if Joe Biden doesn't do that voluntarily, you have no way in.
Well, Piers, I don't buy into that. I'll tell you, I've spent my life, my professional life, disrupting businesses and categories, trying to disrupt the U.S. Congress that is in desperate need of it. And that's why I'm doing this again. As long as American voters actually get out and vote in the primary, anything is possible. Joe Biden's not a bad man. He's a good man, but he's 81 years old. He's facing the lowest approval numbers in American presidential history. Every poll he's losing, including the battleground states. And even, you know, Charlamagne Tha God, who was just on with you moments ago, and I was on the Breakfast Club just about a week ago, he's speaking the truth too, saying the quiet part out loud. He's not electable. So Democrats will have a choice, Piers, sometime soon, to either go and coordinate a candidate who is going to lose, or go with hope and optimism and a brighter future with a candidate, me, who's 54 years old, and able, willing, competent, and ready to combine the very best of center-right, center-left thinking in America and stop the nonsense and win. That's the choice of American voters, and we got to practice democracy, not just talk about it.
All right, look, you haven't got much time. Give me 3 things you would do if you were president tomorrow. Top priorities.
Oh, let me talk about executive leadership. I will have a bipartisan cabinet of the best and brightest Americans, Democrats and Republicans. I will have a youth cabinet. I will employ zero-based budgeting. I will actually manage our federal government in a fiscally responsible manner. I will address the southern border, which is an unmitigated mess and disaster, inhumane, horrible for our economy and our international reputation, and we must reform our asylum policies. And then I will do what is most important for Americans right now. Costs and chaos are out of control. Life is unaffordable. 60% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, 40% cannot afford a $400 emergency. We've got to attack affordability, and we've got to end the chaos, not just in the United States, but all around the world. End the wars, invest in peace, and bring this country together and do our best to bring this world together before it's too late, Piers. And that's going to take all of us. And by the way, as some have noted, Jamie Dimon, about Biden condemning all Trump supporters, I welcome and invite Trump supporters. I love everybody. As long as you are people of principle and decency and want to work together, Piers, we got to change this nonsense. The two parties are the problem. And I'm running for change, and I don't mind that disruption because I think most people want it.
Well, it's good of you to join me, Mr. Phillips. I would personally say you probably have 2 hopes of succeeding, no hope and Bob Hope, but I do admire the aspiration. And I actually like the cut of your jib as well. So you never know in politics, right?
Hey, you never know. You got to give it a shot. And by the way, mark my words, watch here in New Hampshire on January 23rd, just 4 days from now. You might be surprised. I
look forward to it. I would love to be surprised. Dean Phillips, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Charlamagne, you got...
What an optimist you are, P.
You know what I am? I'm an optimist tinged with being a realist, right? You've got to be real about this. I don't think Joe Biden has shown any indication of wanting to stand down at all. Unless he voluntarily does that, is persuaded to, he is going to be the nominee, right? And for someone like you, you've become, with your show, various shows, but The Breakfast Club in particular has this extraordinary number of young black people who tune in religiously to listen to it, to watch it, and to think, what do they want? What do they want from their president? I mean, they've got two elderly white guys right running for president. This is not an Obama 2008-9 scenario. What do they want to happen here?
Well, when you talk about it in those terms, number one, they want both of them to step out the way. They want the GOP to move away from Trump. They want, Democrats to move away from Biden. But I don't care who you talk to. Most folks you speak to want upward mobility. Like, it's all about money. Like, that's the conversation that they should be having. When they're having conversations about, creating jobs, when they're having conversations about the economy being better, that's great. But is it trickling down to the least of us? Is it trickling down to the hood? Is it trickling down to the rural areas like where I'm from in Moncks Corner, South Carolina? If those people aren't feeling the relief, then they feel like, what you're doing isn't necessarily.
And what did you feel about Jamie Dimon, who says that, if you just ridicule and mock the MAGA crowd, the really hardcore Trump supporters, it's wrong, that you should respect all Americans, right? They're entitled to their opinion, entitled to vote for who they want to vote for. I mean, I thought he had a point. He also had a point that if you just over-demonize Trump, I think I said on your show, I met Chris Rock after the 2016 election the next day, and he said, if someone's murdered 8 people, don't go around saying he's murdered 9 about Trump. In other words, if you just exaggerate how bad he is, people are going to find out.
See, that was 2016. I think in 2024, we kind of see what a Trump presidency is like and how bad it could potentially be. And
what are you most worried about with him?
I'm worried about, the threat to democracy seriously, because when you hear a guy say, hey, we should get rid of the Constitution in order to overturn the results of election, like when you hear a guy say, you hear his lawyers in court say, well, he never agreed to support the Constitution. It's like, whoa, I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, black, white, gay, straight. If you're an American citizen, you cannot have a leader of the free world who does not respect the Constitution.
Dave, you can't have someone who doesn't respect the Constitution.
No, you can't. Well, first off, the beauty of America and our system and the Constitution and the rest of our founding documents is that they work, and we've separated powers enough so that guys like Donald Trump, potentially, if he wanted to be dictator, it's not that you just flip a switch and suddenly you're dictator.
So why are they not using the 14th Amendment then?
Well, hold on a second. I would also say that if you look at the actual reality of Trump's presidency pre-COVID, the economy was booming. Yeah. We had the Abraham Accords, lowest all-time black unemployment, lowest all-time Latino unemployment. And you may remember at the State of the Union when he mentioned that, and AOC and the rest of the Congressional Black Caucus sat there like this. I thought they would have been for low black unemployment. So Trump has done a lot of things right. And I'm saying this as somebody that wasn't even supporting him 3 days ago. I mean, I'm a DeSantis guy. I moved to Florida because
Jamie Dimon, to be fair, to be clear, he's not a big Trump supporter.
Yeah, but there's reality.
He's locked horns with Trump a few times. He's donated to the Democrats, right? It's not, and Trump has rubbished him in public about doing business in China. So it's not like he's a diehard Trumper himself. He just made the point, which I think is right, which is if you just abuse everyone that votes for him, you are basically committing an act of self-harm.
What I would recommend anyone do as this election keeps going is as the rallies start again, and I did not vote for Trump in 2016. I did vote for him the first time, but the second time. And one of the reasons that I ended up doing it was one day in LA, I happened to drive by a rally, and I was like, you know what, let me just go in there and see what's going on. And there were black people, and there were Latinos and gays for Trump, and it was a joy fest. It was a party. American flags everywhere. It wasn't some coalesced idea of let's take out democracy or take out the Marxists or anything else. It was basically kind of like an FU to the system and then just this mix of politics. I mean, that's the interesting
Jessica,
thing
were
about
you at
Trumpism.
this party he's talking about?
It was right
I wasn't invited. There were gays, blacks, Latinos, but no liberals.
What did you think? What did you think of Jamie?
There were an awful lot of liberals.
Yeah, there were 4
actually.
Bernie Sanders voters who probably didn't turn up.
What did you think of Jamie Dimon's comments? Because they were interesting.
I think Jamie Dimon runs a huge international business, and you can see a line in the sand with how people who don't want to lose customers talk about all of this, and they have to do it that way. And that's correct. But as someone who spends my time in conservative media with people who vehemently disagree with me, I've had it up to here. If I could clutch my pearls any harder, whatever it is. They try to say that liberals talk the same way about conservatives that conservatives talk about liberals. If Donald Trump wins the presidency again, you will have a president who calls more than half the country, 81 million voted for Joe Biden, 74 million for Trump, calls us thugs, pedophiles, communists, Marxists, anti-Americans, traitors. I'm not being welcomed into any sort of
I have a question. I have a
there.
question for you, which I asked Charlamagne yesterday. How many immigrants did Barack Obama deport in 8 years?
He's the deporter-in-chief, and I've said it
Do you know how
many
many
times
it
on
is?
the
3 million.
2 million.
He only knows because I told him. He hadn't got a Scooby yesterday.
I thought it was only 2.
It's over 3 million. It was the greatest number pro rata of any president in history.
Yes, and
He
it
was
did
the
not hurt him with
deporter-in-chief.
Latino voters. I say it all the time on the 5. Biden can get tougher about this. Henry Cuellar, he's got it right how he's talking about it. The border Dems, the Mark Kellys of the world, that's all fine and good. But to your point about what this world looked like or this country before COVID, Trump's setting all these records. Guess what? Biden's done better than his records. So black unemployment is lower than it was under Trump. Latino unemployment lower than under Trump. Let's talk about oil. I can't even tell you how many times I've been told, you know, drill, baby, drill. Well, Joe Biden's doing it. 13.3 million barrels. It's the highest amount of oil produced by any country in history.
Good sales pitch, but here's the critical question for all of you, and it's a one-word answer. If it's Biden-Trump in November,
Who am I voting for?
Who wins?
I do believe Biden wins.
Trump.
Charlamagne, the casting votes.
Well, by the way, that's what's so scary about it. Like,
Right, that you have to think.
And by the way, you don't have to want this to happen.
But you're talking about, I know, but you're talking about a guy who has 91 criminal charges, a guy who says he wants to be a dictator for a day, a guy who says we should rip up the Constitution.
Against a guy who doesn't know what day it is.
And that's what I'm saying. So if Biden has done all of these great things and he's up against that and we're still not sure
I need a name, Charlamagne.
Is he winnable? I really don't know.
You got to give me a name.
Who's going to win?
Biden v. Trump.
It's
The
not
rematch.
Dean Phillips.
It's not going to be Dean Phillips. I really, truly don't know. If I had to say right now, I would say Donald Trump.
Wow. There we go, the casting vote. Charlamagne the God, the man with his finger on the pulse of America. Trump.
Maybe, but I don't know. I really.
It's a long time.
That's what's so scary about it.
There's a long time to go. Brilliant to have you all. Thank you very much
Thank you so
indeed.
much.